Motivating for a salary increase or improved compensation package is something many employees think about doing with fear and trepidation, more so in an economic environment that doesn't appear conducive. And sadly, it's a conversation that many choose not to broach at all for fear of rejection from their managers. But if you bring material benefit to your organization, it's important to face that fear and approach your manager or management team to have the conversation for the benefit of long-term mutually beneficial prospects for the worker and the employer. Well, that's the word from a leadership expert, Advaita Naidoo. She's the Africa MD at Jackhammer Global, and she joins us now to discuss this important subject. Thanks very much, Advaita, for joining us. So the fear is normal, I suppose, but what do you need to arm yourself with confidence to be able to knock on your manager's door to get the money and, I suppose, other benefits conversation going?
I think the reason that it is so challenging is that South African corporate culture is quite hierarchical. It's very clear who's the boss and who's the employee. And so salary discussions happen when there's a power dynamic, and it can be quite challenging. I think socially, we've also been taught that talking about money, whether it's at work or, with your friends, it's not proper. So the first step for us is to just demystify it, take the pressure off the conversation. We want to be paid what's fair for what we bring to the table. We want the opportunity to improve our life situation through wealth creation. And there's really no shame in that. There's nothing wrong with wanting more money for yourself or your family. I know it's easier said than done to have that conversation. It does require courage. But once we remove the emotion from the conversation, and divorce ourselves from whatever the outcomes may be, it may be easier to have the discussion. And then the second thing about this is that we shouldn't assume that our companies are just trying to take advantage of us and trying to pay us the least possible. There may be a reason why an employee isn't on the right salary at the moment. So don't assume that you're being hard done by. Do your research, do your preparation, and go in and just have a grown-up conversation.
Yeah, Advaita, let me get in there and just ask the question, what processes must one go through to properly prepare your offensive in negotiating a better deal?
Sure. So I think, it's going to vary from person to person and company to company, but probably 4 main things that you can do. Your preparation should be thinking about what your contribution has been, and think about it holistically from the start of your career with this company or in this division to where you are now. Think about the key projects that you've worked on and make it very obvious where your contribution has been. Don't focus on 1 or 2 key achievements. Make sure you have your full portfolio of work to discuss. Don't wait too long to discuss it, and also don't just discuss the most recent things. The second thing about preparation is looking externally. There are some industry standards out there. It's not as common in South Africa as it is, say, in the US, but you may be able to talk to people in similar roles at your company or at a competitor, talk to a recruiter, look at job boards for just some indication to understand the context of your skills in the broader talent landscape, to think about your unique value proposition. And then the third component of the preparation is practicing. You are going in, this is a pitch. This is a pitch about yourself. You are selling yourself and you are asking for something. So you should anticipate the potential questions that might come your way, anticipate the counter arguments. It's a conversation you need to plan for, essentially. You wouldn't go into a board presentation or a media interview unprepared. So don't be caught on the back foot. And then the fourth thing, and I don't think a lot of people think about it. So let's assume that they might say no to an increase right there. You need to be pragmatic about it. You want to meet someone halfway. So if a company legitimately cannot accommodate a salary increase for you at the moment, either because they have financial constraints or they want to have parity across the organization, think about something else. Is there a performance-related bonus you can get that it's a once-off? Is there an extra stipend for further studies? Could there be flexible working conditions? And these are things that often come out of discretionary budgets. They are more feasible as a once-off spend, and you're showing to your manager that you're not just asking for more money, you're asking for the opportunity to improve your situation, and you've thought about all the alternatives.
Yeah. So why, in your view, is the negotiation of a possible improvement in your compensation package such an important process, even if you don't necessarily get what you set out to achieve?
I think it shows what your intention is. It shows that you are here for the long haul. You're not necessarily looking outside for more money. You're saying, I want to stay invested in this company, but in order to do that, I think there are certain conditions that may need to be met. You're saying, I am prepared for it potentially to be turned down, but I'm signaling my intent. And you're also saying that in order to get the best out of me, these are the conditions that need to be satisfied.
Yeah. And then finally, I think you touched on it earlier, in the event that you have this conversation and you are rejected, you have to ensure that there's no emotion attached there. But do you then decide to stick it out or look for a new position? How must you handle that rejection?
I think that's entirely up to the individual and the way in which the conversation was handled. I think if it's an outright no from your manager and it seems like they're not going to budge and they haven't made any alternative suggestions, I think people are going to feel a little bit less invested in. I think the cautionary piece of advice is never to make it a make or break conversation, because while you may decide to leave, there's never a reason to turn it into a charged and volatile situation and become disengaged if the request is turned down. If you do leave, you don't want to leave on bad terms. So remain engaged, but of course, start looking elsewhere. But I think also for companies, they should also take the pragmatic approach. Calculate the cost of a salary increase versus the cost of replacing an employee who decides to leave. We understand that no one wants to feel bullied into spending more, but there really is a balance to be struck.
Indeed. Advaita, thank you so much for your time there and giving us some good advice. That was Advaita Naidoo. She's the Africa MD at Jack Hammer Global.